Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you'll never miss a new episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the I Love Dentistry office hours with Gary Takas. Today, we have an exciting topic, and the topic is it's time to get serious about diagnosing and treating perio. It's time to get serious about diagnosing and treating perio. Gary, as you know, is an expert in everything business and behavioral side of dentistry. He has been doing this for 41 years. He's also the person who started the very first podcast in dentistry, the Thriving Dentist podcast. And along with me, he helped create the I Love Dentistry Facebook group. So we made it a tradition where he would come on every week and share something that people are asking about. So he has fans and dental practices all over the world and all over the country, in 188 countries to be exact, who listen to every word he says. So Gary, thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, my pleasure. And today's kind of a fun day, Naren. Today, we published the Thriving Dentist Show, kind of our flagship podcast. We publish that every Wednesday. So today, being Wednesday, we publish a new episode. And today was episode number 500. 500.
Congratulations. That is a huge achievement, Gary.
Yeah, kind of a milestone. That means I started publishing it in 2011, 10 years ago. And that means we haven't missed an episode in 500 consecutive weeks. It's coming up on 10 years. So kind of fun. We did something really cool for this episode. We invited a number of my friends, my colleagues, people that you all recognize, and we asked them to give their perspective on what makes a thriving practice in the year 2021 and beyond. And so you're going to want to hear what people like Dr. David Hornbrook have to say about that. Dr. Leanne Brady, Dr. Mark Montgomery, Dee Dee Reed, Dr. Paul Goodman, Dr. Paul Henney, and others. Fred Joyal was invited to contribute to that one. So, Naren, can you put that link in the comments for today's episode? So if you're watching this after the fact, you can click that link and you can download it. By the way, all 500 episodes can be downloaded for free. Anyway, Naren, thanks for allowing me to talk about episode 500. Now let's talk about our topic, which is...
Yes, I did put the link, Gary. And it's like you said, it's an amazing episode. It's already breaking all the records in terms of download. So it's an awesome episode where you have the best in dentistry sharing their 25 years of experience in 5 to 7 minute clips. So that's awesome.
Well, what's interesting about it, Naren, there's kind of a common theme throughout the comments with no collaboration. In other words, we asked them to do it independently, but it's interesting how all these brilliant leaders in dentistry kind of have a common theme, but they came at it independently from their own perspective. So I think you'll all enjoy it. And different words of wisdom, but common themes for sure. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Hey, let's talk about today's I Love Dentistry office hours topic. Is it time to get serious about diagnosing and treating perio? It's past time for that, Naren. And the reality is, as I look at practices around the country, there are those practices that are tuned in, general practices that are tuned in to periodontal disease and to treating periodontal disease conservatively within their hygiene department. And sadly, there are many, many, many others that it's not on their radar screen. It's not on the radar screen. And I'm going to politely suggest it's time to get it on your radar screen. Periodontal disease is an epidemic in the world and right here in the US. It's an absolute epidemic. And, if you're simply cleaning everyone's teeth as they come in for hygiene, and we're not addressing some of the root causes of their health issues, then I'm going to use a blunt phrase, then we're guilty of supervised neglect. And I'd like to think that none of our members in I Love Dentistry would knowingly participate in supervised neglect. And it's time to get serious about it, especially with the emerging information that we're learning about the oral systemic connection the oral systemic health connection. In other words, the way your mouth is so intimately connected to your overall health. Now, Naren, I had a wonderful mentor that tuned me in to periodontal disease and the importance of developing a successful way of treating in the dental practice many years ago. And that was Dr. Omer Reed. And he invited me in the early 1980s to co-teach with him in a program that he called People Without Perio. People Without Perio. So it was about how to help our patients become healthy and not have periodontal disease. And for our hygienists that are watching, this was at the very beginning of the Kai's technique, And we were pioneering some things that was really kind of in the embryonic stage. And one of the things that we did was you have to go back to the early 1980s and understand what technology we had, and more importantly, what technology we didn't have. And one of the things we would do is we would take a cotton Q-tip and we'd run it along the inside of the cheek to grab a culture. And then we would culture that on a slide, on a microscope slide. And of course, at that time, we didn't have the ability to connect the microscope slide to a monitor. That technology wasn't available. So the patient would have to look through the culture, through the microscope looking glass. And they would see, if they had periodontal disease, they would see spirochetes. They'd see bugs, moving around on the slide glass. And we would tell the patient, take a look at this. You're going to see some bugs. And the more bugs you see, the more indicative it is of having a problem that we need to get under control. Over time, we're going to hopefully see fewer. We'll never see no bugs because there's healthy bugs in the mouth. But over time, hopefully we'll see fewer. And the patient would look under the glass and they would see these bugs. And while it didn't have great scientific merit, in other words, we couldn't speciate, we couldn't tell them what bugs they had. But it did serve as a tremendous patient motivator. I would sit in Dr. Reed's office, I'd walk the hallways and I'd watch, and a patient would look in the microscope and they'd say, oh, I need to do something about that, don't I? Yep. And then we would share with them what we could do. And then the next time they'd come in, they'd look under the glass and they'd see fewer bugs and they'd say, great, we're making progress. And so it was a wonderful patient motivator. Today we have extreme advances of this available today through salivary diagnostics, where the patient can swish in a cup. We can send it off to a lab for an assay for analysis, and we can determine of the 11 pathogenic bacteria that cause periodontal disease. By the way, that was discovered by Dr. Sig Sokransky in 1998. Sig Sokransky was the periodontist, was the director of the Forsyth Institute, which is affiliated with Harvard, and they do research on dental topics. And he identified the 11 pathogenic bacteria that cause periodontal disease. And we now, through the use of sophisticated diagnostics, can determine what of these 11 bacteria you have in your mouth and what concentration levels you have. And there, in turn, we can design a treatment plan that is very much customized and tailored for you. So maybe the most important reason to get serious about diagnosing and treating perio has to do with the quality of how we enhance our patients' health and their lives. And given that we know that there's a connection now, there's enough research for me to confidently say there is a direct connection between an infection in your gums and 5 very specific health conditions. Let me walk through those: heart disease, stroke, diabetes, preeclampsia or early term birth, and certain cancers. The 2 cancers in particular would be OSC, oral squamous cell, but also pancreatic cancer. So in other words, the presence of an infection in your gums increases the likelihood that you could experience those 5 health issues: heart disease, stroke, diabetes, preeclampsia or early term birth, and certain cancers. There's emerging evidence, and I have to use that term because it's not quite as advanced in the discovery yet, but it's emerging, that there's a link to Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and fertility as well. And I believe that within the next little while, we'll be able to change the language from emerging evidence to saying there's a direct link to an infection in your gums to those three other conditions, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and fertility. But this is a way we can truly enhance our patients' lives by improving their overall health by getting their gums in as healthy condition as we can. So it's time. It's long past time. But let's also focus on the business side for just a minute, Naren. So I wanted to lead by talking about the clinical perspective first. I don't think any of our listeners would they want to help their patients become as healthy as possible. Naren, you've gotten to know our, I call them listeners, but let's call them community members, or I Love Dentistry community members. I believe that's a common theme across all of them. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, Gary. I think it is definitely a common theme. Absolutely.
They're about excellence. They're about helping their patients become as healthy as possible. And they're all about using the science and technology we have to help our patients. So certainly we should lead with that. But let me put my green visor on for just a minute, Naren, and talk business. Is it okay if I pivot and talk business for just a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of points, I think in my experience, I've learned a lot because we have mutual clients, and this is not just good for the patients. It's just not the right thing, but it's also can be a strong driver of your business. And I'm sure you're going to explain that, Gary.
Yeah. Well, actually, let me stay on that for just a minute. Imagine that we've chosen to not pay attention to this in the practice. You decide, hey, there's all kinds of other things. This just isn't my thing. So imagine the patient that comes to your practice as recommended twice a year, and they come to your practice for many, many years doing what they think they're supposed to be doing. And imagine that patient ultimately losing their teeth because of the advancing challenge of periodontal disease. How would that patient feel? It's like, I've been coming to you for many years. I've been doing what I thought I was supposed to do, come every 6 months, and now I'm losing my teeth. As I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's supervised neglect. And I don't think any of our members would willingly, knowingly participate in that. But let's be candid. That's what you're doing if you're not diagnosing and treating periodontal disease. Now, let's switch gears and talk to the business side for just a minute. In a thriving practice, I like to see 33%, 1/3 of the total office collections, production, coming from hygiene. 1/3 of the total practice coming from hygiene. And I can confidently say that you're not going to get there if using conservative periodontal therapy isn't part of your hygiene department. You're not going to get to that level. So good business reasons for doing this as well. Not to mention that we're going to help our patients with their overall health, but very good business reasons to be doing this as well, especially given how the public is learning more and more about the connection between oral and systemic health. So really, it's not only the right thing to do clinically, but it enhances the business side of your practice. What I'm looking for in our client base, we have a KPI, a key performance indicator that we look at on a monthly basis. And we look at what percent of the adults that we treated this month were we treating with conservative periodontal therapy codes? What percent of our adults? Now, remember, periodontal disease is largely an adult disease. Now, there is such a thing as juvenile onset periodontitis. But Naren, that's an outlier. That's something that is very uncommon. You can encounter it, and many of you probably have, but it's not common. Periodontal disease is largely a disease of adults. So among the adults in your practice, we're looking for 30% of those adults to be treated with some mix of conservative periodontal therapy codes. Conservative periodontal therapy. And that's a quick check you can do. You can pull the reports up in your practice management software, whether it's Dentrix, EagleSoft, Open Dental, whatever your practice management software. And you can check that. Now, interestingly enough, Naren, I did this recently with one of my clients, a newer client. We're in the early stages of getting started. And I asked him, I said, Doc, how do you feel you do with diagnosing and treating periodontal disease in your practice? And he said, Garrett, I feel like we do pretty well. A number of years ago, I took my hygiene team members and we attended a course all about conservative periodontal therapy, and we worked really hard to apply these things in our practice. And I think we're doing pretty good. I said, would you like to find out objectively how you're doing? And he said, yeah, how would I do that? And I explained to him this metric, this KPI that we use, where in an ideal situation, we're looking for 30% of the adults being treated with a mix of 4 very specific conservative periodontal therapy codes. He said, yeah, I'd like to see how we're doing. So I pulled it up. And remember, he said he thought we were doing pretty good. Naren, do you remember what the goal was? What's the goal? What percent? You're muted.
30%, Gary.
30%.
30%.
So 30% represents the goal. And so, if someone's at 27%, 28%, 29%, pretty darn good. We're getting there, right? We're not quite there, but we're getting there. So anyway, with that setup, let me tell you, as I pulled the report, by the way, I had it in my briefcase, had it in my backpack, and I pulled it out. And I said, let's take a look at it. And I said, I went ahead and ran it over the last 6 months in your practice, because 1 month might have some, aberration. But if I run it over 6 months, that's a long enough period of time to really kind of take out the peaks and valleys of any data. And it allows the data to be more accurate. I said, over the last 6 months, doctor, would you be surprised if I told you, remember our goal is 30%. Would you be surprised that your practice has treated 8% of your adults? And he looked at me and he kind of let out a sigh. He goes, and I thought we were doing pretty good on that. And I said, well, let me provide some encouragement. It's not uncommon at all for whatever systems we have in the practice for those systems to erode over time. And I asked him a quick question. I said, remember you told me, Doc, that you went to that course and you brought your hygiene team members. Do you have any new hygiene team members since you've gone to that course? He said, yeah, as a matter of fact, 2 of them are new. I said, well, that might be a possible explanation that they didn't have the benefit of that same training. So I said, don't beat yourself up about the fact that you're at 8%. It just lets us know there's massive room for improvement. And it's not uncommon for systems to erode and evaporate over time. And that's something that happened in his practice. Well, we're early on, but we're already seeing incredible results. And the interesting thing about it, Naren, is hygienists are all on board. They just want to know what to do, to perform at the level that they expect of themselves. And I want to suggest a resource for any of our I Love Dentistry community members. It's a book. It's a New York Times bestseller. And the name of the book is called Beat the Heart Attack Gene. Beat, B-E-A-T, the Heart Attack Gene. Naren, would you be kind enough to put a link in our comments, an Amazon link for that book?
Absolutely, Gary. And I remember, actually being part of a book club you did for your clients. And thank you for inviting me, because this is a topic that I'm very keenly interested in. And I loved it. I mean, you, of course, summarized the book. You went through the key points, but it's an amazing book. Yeah,
Beat the Heart Attack Gene is written by a physician, an MD. And he is the physician that is credited with perhaps understanding the most from the medical side about the oral systemic connection. And I love one of the quotes that he said in the book, because remember, this is coming from a physician. What I'm about to tell you, you might think would come from a dentist, but no, in fact, it's coming from a physician. And what he said was, in the quote, all good health begins with the mouth. Naren, wouldn't all of our practices be different if every patient in the practice believed that with every ounce of their DNA?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All good health begins with the mouth. And Naren, we actually did a podcast interview with him and Tom Larkin. Tom Larkin is a dentist who is perhaps credited with knowing most about the oral systemic connection from the dentist side. So we had the 2 of them on the podcast. Can you pull that link up on the Thriving Dentist Show and put that in chat? See, let me know if you find it. Give me the title if you found it.
I'm just posting the book. I'll get to it. Absolutely.
Yeah. When you find it, give me the title. I'll make sure it's the right one. And those resources will help you develop this. But that book club, do book club with your hygiene team members. Beat the Heart Attack Gene. And it is a compelling book about why it is now time to get serious about diagnosing and treating periodontal disease. And he presents some compelling evidence how it in fact is an epidemic in the United States today. And it is something that we have the ability to control, and we have the ability to make massive improvement on a patient by patient level. And it's something that we can absolutely treat successfully, and should be incorporated at some level in every dental practice. So pardon me for jumping on my soapbox, but I love this topic.
Gary, there is a podcast you did recently. This came out March 24th, 2021. And the title is It's Time to Get Serious About Diagnosing and Treating Perio in Your Practice.
Yeah, let's put that one up. But let's also put that original interview as the one before that. I think it was done maybe a year before.
Right.
Take a look at that one and give me the title if you find
and
it.
The title is Integration of Medicine and Dentistry with Bradley Bale. This was in 2017, February. Is that the one?
Yeah, Brad Bale. So I don't think I named the physician who wrote the book, Beat the Heart Attack. His name's Dr. Bradley Bale. Brad Bale is his name, Bale. And he wrote that book in partnership with Nancy Doneen, who is a nurse practitioner. And the two of them provided so much useful information in that book. Dr. Brad Bale is the physician that's credited with understanding the most about the oral systemic connection from the medical side. Yeah, great resources. So we've got lots of resources for you in the comments. And just kind of take this step by step and start implementing what you're learning. And especially if you listen to that most recent podcast where we said, it's time to get serious about diagnosing and treating perio. We literally go through the whole program of how to put a system like this in your practice and really having it firing on all cylinders.
Thank you so much, Gary. Any final thoughts as we come to a close? And once again, congratulations on your 500th episode. That's a huge accomplishment. What stands out in my mind is you did not miss a single week in 500 weeks. Rain, COVID-19, the recession, you name it. Personal challenges, health, you name it. You just didn't miss it.
When I started, I outlined the project, and I had some wonderful podcast mentors. These are experts in the world of podcasting. And they said one of the keys to developing a successful podcast was consistency. There's lots of people that'll start one and they'll do 3 or 4 episodes, and then they'll stop for a month and then do one and stop for 2 months and do another one. And I decided I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be consistent. And I made the commitment that I would publish a new episode every week, and every Wednesday. We publish, and so we record them ahead of time, and we publish a new episode every week. And I'm rather proud of the fact that 500 consecutive weeks in a row for the Thriving Dentist Show. And anyway, there's no end in sight. We keep coming up with all kinds of new topics and new discussions to have on the podcast. I'd invite you to hit subscribe, whether that's on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Spotify. Hit subscribe. What that means is every Wednesday when we upload a new show, it'll automatically be uploaded to your listening device for your convenience. It's free to hit subscribe. So hit subscribe so you never miss a future episode. We have lots of cool ones coming up.
Absolutely. And I feel like you've spent 40 years, so approximately 100,000 hours thinking about dentistry. So they get to hear an hour of it once a week. That's kind of distilled down in a way that's easy to understand and easy to implement. So thank you for that, Gary.
Well, you're kind of assuming that was a 40-hour week, Naren.
That's what I mean. I did 2,500 hours so 50 hours a week. So I kind of...
I think I would have to report that very often it was a lot more than 50 hours. Very much so. But it's my passion. I love helping dentists and team members develop their ideal practice. And there's no end in sight for the Thriving Dentist Show or for the podcast we do together called the Less Insurance Dependence Podcast. We have lots of new information and resources to share with our listeners. So it has met my objective, which was to publish useful information on a regular basis in a convenient method, a convenient format. And certainly podcasts are very convenient. You can listen to them on the car. You can listen to them on the treadmill, listen to them when you're walking the dog. And so certainly it's a convenient format. So I want to take a minute and say thanks to all of our listeners. We currently have listeners in 188 countries, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. According to the UN, there's only 195 countries, so there's 7 left. And I actually looked those up because I'm kind of nerdy about this. And the 7 countries that we are still looking for listeners in are small island nations in the South Pacific. At one time, they were all under French territory, French Polynesia, and now they're independent island nations. So we're looking for listeners. If you know any dentists in those independent island nations in the South Pacific, tell them about the Thriving Dentist Show. Love to be able to say that we were the first dental podcast to have listeners in all 195 countries.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, everyone who's part of the community.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all. Thanks so much.